Hello and welcome. It was almost a full month since the last video, and I worked hard all this time, so now I'm ready to present to you Net and Play, networking library based on the engine of my last game, Pong Online. It's written in Kotlin with a bit of Java, and it's Apache Common licensed, so you can use it in any project which work on Java Virtual Machine to get the best client-server experience you've ever had. The main focus of this project is to make network interactions as easy as possible, and the title Net and Play, as in plug and play, describes it quite clearly. Minimal code needed to create a simple client-server application with this lib presented on the screen. But the other focus of this project is to make it as protected as possible from any attacks. To say more about it, I actually encourage everyone to try and find a way to break it in some way. All the code is open source, so you have all the information you need to do so. I appreciate any contribution. Now that we've finished with general information, let's get into the details about this library and its principles. I described all of the core concepts without getting into specifics of realization in my last video, so if you're interested in a more generalized overview of the transfer protocol, I recommend you to check it out. This video focuses more on the concrete realization that is presented in the library. There are two main concepts you need to understand to start with this lib: commands and engines. Command is a class which contains only one method, execute. The idea behind this class is that you can extend from it and put the code that you want to be executed on the other side of the network in this method and pass any data you need to execute it through the constructor. Objects of this class are serializable using smart serialization method based on features of strong typization, so that it can be then recreated on the other side and executed. In this way, sender knows about all the possible command types and data they need to supply for it to work, while not duplicating any code and automatically checking data to be correct. There are two types of commands: request command, which client sends to the server, and response command, which server sends to client in return. And the important point is that request command has one more function. This is one of the protection measures. Server won't execute your command if it returns engine class that you don't have access to. Engine is a part of server side in Net and Play, which acts as a sandbox for client code execution, and as a way to divide your server into zones with different access rights and functionality, so that you can easily define access rights for a client. And, speaking of access rights, there is a special method inside of the engine class that lets you ask to be rerouted. It can be called from your commands execute method if you want to change the engine. Keep in mind, standard server realization will reroute you silently without responding in any way, to disallow scanning for the engines that attacker can access. This is a sort of security through obscurity. But if you want, you can create your own server classes which will respond to reroute requests. Getting back to the commands and their execute method, as you can see, it has one parameter, and in request command this parameter is a subclass of an engine. So the engine is the only thing that command is able to access. And if you want to work with some sort of client-written scripts, you'd better check that it's safe on your own. But even if you can't, these scripts only get access to engine. You'd better not put any important objects into this engine. Now let's talk about initializing library on both client and server sides. To do so on client, you just need to create network connector class, supply an IP, port and also execution context, which acts as an engine for the client, and will be supplied to response commands execute method. It can be any object you want. Initializing library on the server side is a little harder. You need to create server application object, which is a bit complex. To do it, you can use builder class, which will help you set up everything fast. The most important thing to do when you are initializing your server is to supply at least one engine and supply its class to build method. This engine will act as a default one for the clients that are just connected to your server. After you finish with building your application and ready to run your server, just call start method. Keep in mind that this method is blocking the thread. if you want to add some functionality to a program except the server itself. And that's all you need to know to start using this library. There are 2 more classes that Builder lets you add to a server application, but they will be filled by default once if you leave them blank. First of them is a processor, which is responsible for sending and receiving commands to and from the server. For example, you can create a custom processor if you want to make a single player mode and do all the interactions inside of the program without using that code. Second of them is a router. This object is responsible for whether to execute command or not. Default realization of it has a few constructor parameters to help you with that. But if you want to create some custom access right logic, you can create your own router. And now that's surely everything about this library. At this stage it's not yet documented and lacks examples, but it's fully working and I'm planning to work on documentation and examples in the next few weeks. That's it for today. As I've said, this library is open source. You can find source code of this project and instructions about using it on GitHub. I also appreciate any contribution to this project. You can find links to GitHub and other socials where I post short updates in the description. Consider subscribing and ring the bell to stay tuned about the projects I'm working on. At this point, I can't wait to continue working on this project and also get back to Atomic Shift, which I'm planning to work on very soon. But for now, thanks for watching, leave your comments down below. I am answering and appreciate all of them. I'd also love to hear if you have any ideas for the future logs and other activities. Stay safe, have a good day, and bye!